Call the meeting to order. So just noting attendees are Commissioner Larson, Commissioner McKinley, Commissioner Luke, Councillor Koenig, Commissioner Gish. We have an agenda in our package unless you're Councillor Koenig. One of the things that I mentioned just offline is the chief has a COVID response meeting at 11, so I'm going to try to keep this fairly tight. But on review of the agenda, we'll see how much we can get through, I think is what's going on. Definitely want to note and welcome Brenda Vaughn, who's going to give us a presentation on her key performance indicators, which I know the chief has been pretty excited about, so we're all looking forward to hear about. Anything else on the agenda, or can I get a motion to adopt?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you, Elaine Larson. All in favor? Passed. Minutes from last meeting. I had reviewed them, I think, last week when they came out. Anyone have any thoughts or suggestions or comments on content? Then, if not, I'd love to accept a motion to accept. Elaine, thank you. All in favor? Passed. All right, Brenda. Madame Vaughn, we are excited to hear from you and really appreciate you taking the time to come see us. Just pre-meeting, we'll work on our technology and try to get this report out. So if you are comfortable, I'm happy to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gish. So I thought I'd take, Lauren and I talked about maybe 15 minutes to do this presentation. Certainly I will leave room for questions at the end, but also if there was interest beyond today, we can certainly come back and Lauren and I can talk further about it. But just a bit of background, the KPI project was born of the city's wish. And the city of Lacombe had been on a track for a few years where they were starting to introduce the idea of performance measures into their culture. Performance measures is an evaluation tool, and largely it focuses on what you're actually getting done compared to what your strategic goals suggest you should be getting done. And it's a process, it's a live dynamic process. And it's a learn as you go process. So you establish your goals, you look at your activities, your frontline work, and then you try to create a through line there. You understand that if this is the commission's specific goal to, reduce personal crime or whatever that might be, then you look at your activities and you see what are all the things that are happening on the front line to achieve that goal. And you're monitoring it in a live way. You've established goalposts and you just keep working and you keep looking to see if you are moving away from the goal, towards the goal, you're hitting the goal. So it's a process that is ongoing and live. And performance measures is really suited to complex organizations such as yourself, such as a municipal government. It's a tool that is easily used once you set it up. And it can coexist with all kinds of other evaluation processes or regulatory requirements. It doesn't cancel out all the other jurisdictional marks that you must hit from regulatory bodies or policies or city requests or those kinds of things. So it's a flexible model, but it does take a bit of groundwork. Within a performance measure framework, and that's the work I've been working on, you need three things. You need the framework, which involves outlining very clearly what your strategic goals are. And in the case of the Police Commission, we derived all of the goals from your particular strategic plan. You are the group that is responsible for police services. We did extend that beyond to make any connections we could between the Police Commission strategic goals and the City of Lacombe strategic goals. And the nice line there is the City of Lacombe has a strategic goal of being a safe and healthy community. And so we attached all of your strategic goals to that overall outcome of the city. And that's the beginning of us getting this through line between what happens on the streets and what actually comes out the other end relative to the Police Commission's goals. And I'm going to take you through that in more detail. So what we did was we went through the strat plan, and I read and you have a lot of documents and a lot of reporting that you do, and I went through all of those things, and I pulled out anything that sounded like a service level. And that becomes the measure, that becomes the performance measure. We want to measure how we're doing in particular areas. And again, I'll take you through that in more specific terms shortly. So we get a measure, we have a strategic goal, we build a measure, and then within that we need an indicator. And the indicator tells us what data we're going to collect that will actually tell us if we're advancing or moving away from that goal, or how the extent to which we're achieving that goal. And so you connect these three things, which gives you that through line from the bottom to the top. And you are always evaluating based on real-time data how in fact your organization is doing. And really performance measures is measuring what performance is doing. So whatever you perform in your daily job, that is what is being tested or measured. So that's a pretty quick overview of what performance measures is. And I know that Lauren had mentioned that there had been some work previous trying to develop KPIs in the policing industry. So he had a little bit of background in that, and you may well have been aware of that project as well. So the city because the city is not the guiding body for the policing services, they did allow Lauren to participate in this project. But everything that we present to you needs to be approved by you and agreed upon by you, and it won't become part of the city's KPI framework until the commission has actually signed it off. So just in timing, I'm meeting with you today, and this will be a preliminary meeting. The entire report, I believe, is going to City Council on the 27th of September, and so we will be including, Diane will be including in that memo that this presentation happened. And so if the commission has any feedback or concerns or questions or whatever, we would be noting those in that future report. We just were trying to keep the two oversight bodies separate, even though we're working on one project. So how we did this, how we approached it was, I met with each manager, so in this case at Lauren, and he gave me a whole bunch of stuff to read. And I went through your strategic plan. And now, Lauren, if we want to go to the inventory, which is the large document, I went through your strategic plan and your number of annual reports and those kinds of things, and I pulled out anything that looked like a service level. And when we talk about service levels, we talk about things that say, we expect this to happen. And a broad one for the police is, you expect there to be 24-hour policing. And you are a community-based police model. So that by itself says to us that's a service level that we're trying to achieve and deliver. And so if you look through this framework, and I'll just take you through it. On the top, you'll see on the left-hand column is the strategic plan outcome. And this is, when I went through your strategic plan, I pulled out all the service level language, and then I assigned it to a thematic heading. So the first heading is governance, and anything that was in your strat plan, or anything that were any of the acts or regulations or the reports or whatever that you have produced and that you work under that related to governance, you will see is laid out under governance. The next heading we came up with was budget, and we pulled out all the corresponding information about budgets, and we came up with process measures, response times, crime rates, incidents, and service levels, recruitment. Your document is quite lengthy, and for a good reason. Training, and then officer diversion, and then patrol availability factor. I think there's one more. I guess that's it. So I took those measures or those thematic headings, and I built those headings just by looking at all the information and seeing what the themes were, what they were rolling up to in terms of an umbrella, I guess, if you will. And so those words in that left-hand column will become a measure. If we are measuring any one thing connected to that measure, we will pull out the specific item related to that, but it will always roll back up to governance. The next two columns are about your indicators. Key performance indicators. Some people, it's important that you have two pieces to it. You need the efficiency indicator and you need the effectiveness indicator. Efficiency indicators are pretty easy to capture. That's where you capture volumes or numbers or the how much did you do. So how many hours of service or how many tickets or how many hours of sick time or the number of vehicles or those kinds of things. And those are the kinds of information that we will collect around under the efficiency part of the indicator. Under the effectiveness indicator, we actually want to look at how compliant you were with the service level that is tied to that specific measure. And so an example is, you do an audit and you complete audits and you would want to be, I'm sure the service level is that you are in compliance with that audit. And so you would calculate the occasions that you had the audit, and then you would say over a few years, we have hit a 94% compliance rate or 99% compliance rate. And then the commission would say, are we good with that? Or do we want to be at 100%? And so that's a very simple example of something. And that would all roll back up to governance. When we talk about targets or service levels, under this column, you are going to see any policy, regulation, legislation, document that you have, directive, protocol, that affects that particular service level. And so that's where we go through those and we find all those targets relative to that particular measure. And then that's what we start trying to measure. So I'm hoping this is making some sense to you. And you'll see what we're, after I go through this, we're going to see where we fleshed out a couple of them, and you'll see how this all kind of lines up. So I put together this large inventory, and then Lauren and I sat down and met, and he went through and he took out things that don't pertain to Lacombe City Police or and aside from that, he added some things, and then he also selected one or two that he was really interested in fleshing out and pursuing sooner than later. And those are the ones that we'll talk about in a second. So this inventory is in place for long-term use. If the commission decides to implement KPIs, he has selected I think it's 2 or 3 that he wants to start with. And he'll be looking for your blessing, I think, in that. And then you will start to implement these things to start reporting out on these selected measures. But this inventory really is just something that is a bit of a catalog, and as you move along, or maybe as issues become top of mind, things shift and change in terms of what you're spending your time on, you will go in and pull and measure out of here. And so all the background is here. You just need to build the measure when you go to start doing the data collecting. So when you read through this, if you do read through this, you should see an awful lot of information coming out of your strategic plan. Your strategic plan was interesting in that you had set goals, but you also had set some pretty specific target levels for services, expectations that you had included percentages with, or reevaluating scores on a 5-year rolling average and those kinds of things. And so your plan your strategic plan actually was very helpful in setting this up. So now if we want to look at just some of the selected KPIs, you'll see how they get built out and prepare you to actually start working with them. And so the first KPI that the chief selected was the authorized police force. And so just again on this format, we made this template and these formats to always remember that we've got that through line coming up from the bottom to the top in terms of the organizational structure. So we've got Lacombe Police Services at the top. The outcome is the healthy and safe community. That is the city of Lacombe's outcome, that the work that the police service does is contributing to. And then the measure we identified, a measure will always say one specific thing. And in this case, you are evaluating your authorized police force. And we define that as the sworn members and non-sworn support staff and strength of that resource. And then you'll see behind that internal and external. In KPIs, sometimes you're collecting data and doing evaluation that is of no interest to the public. It is simply interesting to the organization as to how well you're advancing your operational goals. But in some cases, it is very interesting to the public, and you are going to want to take your KPI information and use it internally and externally. And that's a call that the commission will make once you start gathering some of your data. So for example, you know, if the crime rate is going down, I'm sure that's something that you would want to do some external publication on. But if you've got some internal issues that are related to regulatory requirements that you're struggling with, that's going to be something you're going to deal with internally. But you decide that when you start collecting the data, where it's going to end up in the end. And that's really an important part of KPIs. So the next heading is service level. And under here is where you will see all the different documents or regulations or policies that impact service level around the authorized police force and the work that they do and how they do their work and when they do their work and on what occasions they do their work and at what strength they have to be and those kinds of things. And so as you can see, you have a lot of different bodies that influence the how the police work gets done. And the reason that we identify these on KPIs is because this is actually directing your service level, and there are targets you must meet here. And for you, you have internal legislation and you have external legislation that you are dealing with, and then you have policies. So we tried to lay those all out, and then you have your strategic plan. And so I've created I've listed any document in here that has very specific ideas about what should be happening as you deliver policing services. And we call those our service levels. Then we create a narrative around why are we bothering to measure this. And so this explains the significance of collecting data on this particular measure. Here is where we talked about there's some, there are things implied, or we infer things based on the actual model of policing that you have. You have a community-based policing model, and the expectation is that there's 24/7 coverage. And so that right away establishes the how you're going to do that work and the resources that are required. We've fleshed that out and added in the difference between service delivery capacity and then deployment. So those are the two things that are always being balanced. You have resources, and when you talk about your human resources, you have so many bodies to cover the 24/7. But then when particular calls come in and other legislation kicks in, there are particular numbers or troop strength that have to attend different calls. And so there's always this balance between the capacity and the deployment. It's not a straight line. It's not if you have 24 hours to cover, you need 7 bodies. It's not, there's all these shifting. So we were trying to capture that. We talked about the current police force strength, and then we talked about the complexities of making sure that all of the different events that can happen that can influence that police force strength. So people being away on leaves or injury or in training or those kinds of things impact that whether or not you can retain or maintain the troop strength that you're supposed to have depending on the nature of the call. So we were just trying to clarify the significance of that balance. Then we have a list of what success in this metric looks like. And in Lauren's case, these will be annual reviews and comparisons. And so you will be looking at this year's data over last year's or the prior year and to develop some trends. And so success in this area would look like sustained staffing, level of sustained staffing on specialized assignments. The vacancy rate is 0. The authorized hours of service are fulfilled 100%. The per capita sworn member ratio mirrors provincial average ranges, set ranges, and that was something that I think that came out of your strategic plan. Dispatched call types are met with adequate number of police officers, and so this is tracking the times that you were able to meet those targets or you were not able to meet those targets. And response times are maintained or exceeded. That support positions are filled and maintained, and that they maintain or exceed a favorable standing mid-range CSI ranking for similar sized communities in Alberta. And I believe this is a rolling average. You had put that time frame in your strategic plan. And so these are the things that we're going to track. And Lauren has the ability to track. One of the discussions at the top of this project was, we said to the managers, select things that you know you are already collecting data on, because we can go back and get that data and we can right away create some trending and year over year information. But the goal of an indicator is to actually show how things are moving over several periods of time. And it's those shifts then as the managerial group that you want to address, whether they're good or bad or indifferent. And then the data collection source tells us where the information is. And then all the boxes are all the kinds of things that we are going to collect. And when we have the data that's listed in these boxes, it's going to allow us to report to this particular indicator, and then we will do analysis based on the data that we have collected. And so the report will come out, and this is not unfamiliar to you. I saw in your annual report to the city, you would report the number of times that you were able or not able to provide the adequate troop strength for particular calls. And of course, we want that number to be favorable. And if it isn't, then you do some analysis and you say, well, the times that we weren't able is because of this. We had 5 members off on sick leave, or it doesn't really matter, but you explain what was going on. And then you say, in order to get to our target, what has to change? Do you need more resources? Do you change your service level? You know, that's the discussion that you have. But the goal is to always be looking at your data and then remediating the circumstances to your satisfaction, as a means to hit your service levels that you set out for yourself. So I don't know that I will go through each one. These are quite lengthy. So I certainly can go through them if you'd like, but I know that we had some time constraints. But this, I'm wondering or hopeful that this shows you an example of what we've been working at. And the conclusion of this is really just laying the groundwork. Now that we have this information and we've created the framework, the goal now is to start collecting that data and getting it organized, and then being able to report out on it at your reporting intervals. And the goal will be that KPI data is used to report at your commission meetings, at your council meetings, to your provincial requirements, to any requirement you have. The goal will be that you'll be using KPI data to do that. Lauren, did you have anything you wanted to add?
First of all, I'm not even sure if I was sharing the screen. I hope I was. So if not, my apologies. I mucked that up. But all the information is in everybody's package that I would have been displaying on the screen anyway.
Okay.
I really appreciate the work that Brenda has done on this. And at the end of the day, to sum it up, the council's responsibility is to set service level expectations for policing and then provide the funds to meet those expectations. So then when it comes to the commission's role is how to utilize those funds. in alignment with our strategic goals and priorities. So this KPI project really brings those two entities and governance bodies together so that as a police service, we can move forward with direction that's in alignment with all oversight and governance bodies to meet the overall expectations for the police service, and also align our budgets with the those operational costs and expectations. So that's why I really find value in what I'm doing, but also moving forward, the KPIs would really define the path and set a template for developing our future strategic plans, so that all of that direction and documentation is in alignment. And that's what I hope to achieve. And really, it will make the commission's job easier in creating and meeting the expectations through that strategic plan for however many years are set for that plan. But both documents, KPIs and a strat plan, are somewhat fluid as well. But I do think this really defines that process for us and gives us a template to work with. So I'm very supportive of the work Brenda's doing overall, and that'll probably be followed at some point in time with conversation around how we have Brenda support us in the development of our next strategic plan, because our current one expires at the end of this year and we need to develop another one moving forward. So thank you, Brenda, for all the work you've done.
Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
I know, Ruben, go ahead.
Just to be clear, Brenda, as you mentioned, this is a framework that we put in place. It will really take, I'm guessing, at least 2 years of data, kind of get a clear indication of what or our meeting the service levels we've set out, correct? Is that fair to say?
Well, that may be true, Councillor Connick, but looking at the police documents, you are collecting a ton of data for a lot of different reasons, which I think could actually be streamlined. And I think one of the things that could happen very quickly is you could get a 3 or 4 year trending looking backwards. And then, of course, your current year would be added on to that. But I think that you would be able to do some significant trending just based on the data that you have to give you sort of a baseline, or, yeah.
And to some degree, we've been doing that in our annual report,
Mm-hmm.
but it will help us bring that annual report in alignment with the KPIs and the business plan. So much of the data we've been collecting, we've been reporting on for years now, but it's really bringing that relevant data in alignment with other functions or reporting documents. So it gives us a focus at the end of the day. So for us, the data portion, we've really been reporting on it for a while.
And the data that I saw mostly is efficiency, how much, what was done, how many hours, how many of this. But what you're really interested in is, can you meet the service level of community policing model 24/7 with your current resources? And if so, great. If not, where are the glitches, and what would it require to make that easier to do?
So we're, I guess, in terms from what the commission does with this, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed with the information. I know we all would have had the package ahead of time and kind of taken a quick skim and go, okay, maybe Brenda Canal must make sense of it. And I think that you did. But I can see that it's quite a lot. It seems like it's quite a large project, necessary project. But I'm also hearing you say, Brenda, that the data is there. It won't necessarily be a huge change in processes within the service, but perhaps using the data that's being collected more, well, just using it and understanding it better if we set this up. So on a go forward basis, when we started out this meeting, you had said this is something the city's doing, and whether the police service does it or doesn't do it is our decision, and that's a decision that needs to be made by the commission. So should the commission decide that yes, we want to proceed with this, what is our next step?
I think that Lauren had some ideas around that, but the work would happen with Lauren and I think myself to help him gather the data and get it organized. Back to your point, you do have a lot of information that's coming out of several different sources. But in discussing with Lauren, we were thinking we could create sort of a centralized data collection form that we would actually then tie to this framework. And so, and we would start with the 1 or 2 KPIs. You can't start with all of the KPIs. That is overwhelming and not often productive. And then I think you would want to tool your internal documents. And so Lauren had mentioned, you know, your strategic plan would start to look like a performance measures strategic plan. You still have all the same information, it's just organized differently. And then how you do your strategic planning, also, you come back to setting your targets, and then we work backwards from there. So internally, I think what it would do is maybe bring your documentation together and maybe give it some similar formatting and build those connections.
And then at the city level, you said you're presenting to council as well. Where are they at, Councillor Comic? Is this something that the city is, are they at the same stage we are with this report, or? Okay. And so this is something the commission can choose to do whether or not the city chooses to do it. But certainly if the city chooses to do it, it really does improve our communication, which is something that's been a goal of ours as a commission as well, is making sure that city and the commission understand each other and talking the same language. Any other thoughts or questions for Ms. Vaughn at this point? I really appreciate this. I think it's incredibly interesting, and I personally can certainly see the potential in this, and so I really appreciate you coming to explain this to us, Brenda.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering before the 27th whether, Brenda, you need an endorsement from the commission. Sorry.
I don't think so. I'm not presenting the document. Diane Pichet, Director Pichet, is presenting it. I'm working with her on finishing up the report actually right now. My understanding is that this was a strategic goal of city councils and to create KPIs. And so this is going back to them for the first look on the 27th. And I'm not clear what administration is asking council at that point, you know, if it's just except for information or for decision or whatever. So we won't know that until after that. But yeah, I think the police commission, you are an independent organization, can do as you wish, and then wait and see what the city's decision is. Did I see a question over here?
I think Elaine had her hand up.
Elaine, did you have a question?
Elaine, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Can't hear you, Elaine.
We're good now?
Yeah.
So Chair, my question was, is this something that we will take forward to our next meeting with the expectation that we would read through all of it and then make a decision as to where we're going to go from there?
Yeah, I think that we'll have a bit of a discussion today about what's going on and then make that decision. Yes. So I wouldn't mind that once that after Ms. Vaughn has left the meeting, that we get a chance just to discuss, and you're welcome to stay, Brenda, but just kind of discuss it a little bit further amongst us. Just in terms of, I think Lauren has some opinions that I'd like to hear about what he is asking of the commission, and I'd like to be able to discuss that today.
Great. We can move into that discussion if you like.
I think we might as well while it's pertinent.
Hopefully my voice doesn't completely go before that. I'm not sure what's going on here, but
Do you want me to leave the meeting?
Not necessarily, Brenda. I
Okay.
think it's just depending on what you're working on or whether you need to be gone.
I'm fine. I have time. I just wanted to, whatever your will is good.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. Sorry, I was awkward on that.
I think it would be great if, Brenda, if you did stay for my comments. Correct me if I'm not in line with any of my statements, but basically what I see, this initial document that Brenda has put together is really creating that footprint or the framework moving forward. But I see this being a key piece of information and very helpful to the commission when we develop our next strategic plan. So that document for the next few years is in alignment with the KPIs and that we maintain that system moving forward. So the KPI really takes a deeper dig into setting our goals, expectations, what our performance measures are, and how to measure those priorities and the outcomes. So I see that this being instrumental in raising the level and quality of our strategic plan for the future. And then if our strat plan KPIs are in alignment with the city's strategic plan, it really helps speak to those service level expectations overall. So I just see the two documents or the two processes working hand in hand. And what my recommendation either today or in the future would be is that as we move forward with the development of that next strategic plan, is that we would potentially engage or contract services of Brenda to provide us direction and maybe do some of the legwork in putting the documents together so they are in alignment.
Okay.
And I guess the other point is everything that Brenda has in the document was work that we shared, myself and Brenda, to get through this initial process. But everything can be adapted or changed. So as the commission moves through identifying priorities, the KPIs can also change in alignment with whatever the commission sees should be the priorities, not necessarily what I have identified as the priorities. So the documents are adaptable, but Brenda would really be that link to bring everything together for us.
The commission itself, so the police service has a strat plan and the commission itself also has a strat plan. And so it means that as a commission, we need to, when the service reconfigures theirs, the commission will need to as well. So it will give us some opportunities to, I guess, feel like we're getting information that's useful. You know, I know when I first came on the commission and read the strat plan, you kind of go, yada, 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 words, words, words. But what does it mean in real life? And I really do see this as something that helps us understand it's not just words, that we can actually use it to guide whether we're doing a good job or not. Brenda, with that, you know, what the chief is proposing to us is essentially that we need to see if Brenda would be interested in doing some contract work just to help us get started, because as a volunteer board, this is more than we're able to take on. And the chief himself needs to participate in it, but it's something that his time, it's not a project he can lead, and I don't know that you have the staffing to give it to someone else to lead it. Once it's established, we can staff it to follow it. Is that something that you would be interested in doing without holding a gun to your head today?
Yeah, I'm interested in the implementation phase, and yes, I'm interested in that. And I just wanted to go back to your comment about the strat plan, business planning. One thing that performance measures does so nicely is you start with the higher organization goals, which is the commission strat plan. And then the operational business plan must feed into that. And then the operations, policies, protocols, activities have to be, the work on the ground has to be shooting up to some umbrella. It can't be going around or looping back and forth. So if the commission sets this as their top 3 goals, then we have to back up and build the KPI business plan that matches that. And then we have to back up and get the data from the front line that's actually going to feed and answer those questions. So in terms of alignment, that is one of the values or the merits of performance measures, is it really gets, it just aligns things very clearly.
Any other thoughts or questions on that? So I think from our point of view, Commissioner Larson, you were going back to what's our plan here? You know, are we going to take this away and think about it and then table it for decisions on what we'd like to do at next meeting? And I think that suggestion is correct. That now that we've had that explanation, it might be a little bit easier to read and dig through it. With the expectation that at the next meeting, we're going to give the chief some guidance on how we'd like to see him look at this opportunity.
Okay.
Good enough? All right, any other thoughts on this? Let's carry on with our meeting. And again, Brenda, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you all, and talk soon.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Brenda.
It is a public meeting, so you are welcome to stay.
It's okay. I'm going to read a very long report right now.
Yeah, it sounds like you have things to do.
Yeah, okay.
Quick deadline.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Let's move on to item 5 on our agenda then. So Jen, just for our record for agenda for next meeting, we'll just move this into old business for the October meeting. The chief has presented his report in the package. Highlights, chief?
Yeah, I'm going to go over the highlights really quickly because some of the items are actually covered on other agenda areas. So just in relation to the budget, actually finance has or will be presenting a Q2 budget actual report to City Council. So that has
It's
been done. All indications on that report are that the city will be sitting in a surplus position at the end of the year. This is preliminary, but current projections, and a large part of that surplus will be realized due to the police services under spending in the age of wages and benefits is really the lion's share of that. So overall on our budget for September, we're looking at 67% would be the target to be used. Our actual is at 62%. We still have some billing for some revenues, but overall we are still forecasting some sort of surplus by the end of the year. So other than that on my report, speak about the meeting with Minister Madhu in 7.3, which my time was either being on holidays or budget preparations, and then external with the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team as chair of the Provincial Executive Committee for CISA. We're looking for a new director, so I've been assisting with identifying someone for that role. And if there's any questions from the rest of my report, I'm open to take them.
Chief, one question on the Next Gen 911 webinar that you attended. Anything new and exciting come out of that one? Or is it still scheduled to come 2023, 24, something like that?
Yeah, it's still rolling. It's rolling out still. 23, 24, or spring of 24 would be the deadline, and we're on target to meet that. It's nice that through that meeting, more information is coming up, out. We're getting more supplier information, and more options are developing as far as either buying or leasing programs and equipment. So as we move forward, it's important that we're involved in those conversations so that we can identify our best options. So it was informative. And then okay. Just on another note, that I might be into the punch on is with our APRAX console dispatch, update on that. We've been notified that the system is in, so we're meeting with Prairie Communications next week to develop a schedule for the implementation of that software and system. So that's moving forward for next week.
Perfect. Are any other services on the NG 911 yet, or is it still in the infancy stage?
Supposedly, just the RCMP dispatch centers are. I just haven't seen how that's actually working, whether they're fully on the system or not. Gotcha. So I think when the opportunity presents itself that we find a dispatch center that has gone over completely, that we'll probably go on a road trip and see.
Take notes.
Yes.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
Further questions for the chief's report? So SRO, no report for August, of course. I do understand we should have been in the schools now and got started.
Yes.
Any initial comments or?
She's getting familiarized with the schools. I think the first week is always a little chaotic in the schools, so she was going out to all the schools, just providing her assistance and maybe some time management or prioritization of tasks. So I think Sonia's been helpful in that realm as well. We did have one significant call for service last week where we received a call of an alleged attempted abduction of a child. We worked closely with the schools. The SRO was involved, as well as our patrol members, and we were able to dismiss that complaint fairly quickly, probably not as quickly as we would have liked, because of course social media gets ahead of us very quickly, but we did work closely as a group, and we're in communication as far as release of information and what that was going to look like. And Sonia, I'll defer to you on whether you felt at the end of the day that went well.
Yeah, it absolutely went very well. We did it as fast as we could. Investigations had to occur. We had good relationship between the parents and the police, and also then the school backing up that we were encouraging the parents to let the investigation occur, to not get out on social media too much. So it was a really good coordinated effort, and I really, really appreciated the time that Brian and the chief and Michelle took just to keep the school informed. Because of course, as the chief said, social media gets ahead of it, and this turns into something that we can't put the lid back on. So it went very well, and it was handled beautifully.
Right.
Next on our agenda then is the budget report. So in our package, we have a nice, it kind of feels like we haven't had something this nice and current for a long time. So we can see where we're at really between January to August 2021. We can see that's kind of on a, as per usual, there's always behind on fines and when we get paid. It looks like there's, from an income point of view, some of our grants as well that we're expecting have only been a quarter paid rather than 2/3 paid at this time of year. And it still kind of looks like the chief has us in pretty good shape. Not just pretty good shape, in really good shape for staying on budget on our expense side as well. Do you have some highlights you'd like to put out, or does anyone have any just quick things they want to ask the chief about on this?
And the only comment I have to make is really everything is falling fairly well in alignment on the expense side, other than our fine revenue. That is where we are going to be, I guess, balancing off the loss in revenue on fine revenues to our surpluses on wages and benefits. So on that line, I predict that we will be significantly under our target for fine revenues, but our surpluses should far exceed that. So if that line was in order, our anticipated surplus would be spectacular, but at this point in time, it looks like we'll still be in the good at the end of the year. Also moving into the next budget year, that line item was adjusted, but on our fine revenues, even though the province upped their take, for some reason we're, instead of 65%, we're actually only realizing about 54% on the fine revenue side. And to be quite honest, on the province side, I do not know how things are being pulled and how those checks are being written.
So they're not showing you their math. They're just saying, here's your check.
They show you the percentage and here's the amount you're getting.
All right.
We're right on target for security clearance. So we've come up, we were at the start of the year down a little bit, but we're bouncing back and should be pretty close to our budget expectations.
That's really, you know, as we were listening to Brenda Vaughn talk, is right now our only way to really analyze ourselves in a way that everyone understands is where are we on budget? And it's one of those things where, yay, we balanced the budget, but did we ever really meet our service level expectations? Because we've been so short staffed that it will be helpful to kind of be able to criticize ourselves is and also point out to the city is, yeah, we're fine on money, but this was what the sacrifice was.
Chief,
I'll give everyone just a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, Chief, just on the fine payments from the province, does that come monthly, weekly, quarterly? Like, how often do we get paid on that?
It comes monthly, so it's
Okay.
fine, based on fines paid in a 30-day period. It does come monthly. And we're averaging, it's come up a little bit, but last month it was, I believe, $14,000, which is better than the 8,000 we were experiencing during the height of COVID. But that number should really be double that. It should be in the $25,000 to $28,000 range to meet our targets.
Gotcha. No,
Another
just
performance
curious on that one.
indicator would be how much money in fines are we issuing and how much are we actually having paid to us?
Well, and that, so I don't know if that's a performance indicator for us because we could probably find an average, but we have no control over.
But from a budgeting point of view, it gives you a much better idea. So if I'm expecting to issue, you know, if the safety officer's out there, it's fine for us to say there's X amount of fine revenue, but if we're only collecting enough on a trend, then it gives us a lot, we can analyze our budget better. Sorry, I interrupted you, Cam.
Oh, no, I was done there, but I kind of like where you're going, but I also kind of agree with the chief there. I don't know if we can put that as a complete and total KPI when it's kind of in our control, but out of our control all at the same time. Like obviously the service is going to be providing the fines and the tickets, but if the government is only giving us 54% of what we're or 9% less than what we're expected, we don't want to be knocking ourselves on a KPI because the government can't do math. Would be
but I think it gives us the ability to analyze, we're leaking money here.
Yeah.
And do we need to go back to the province and say what's happening?
Yeah.
And I definitely think it needs to be a consideration and factored into our budgeting processes as to developing a realistic target for that budget line.
Yeah.
Well, and having the data is just way better than speculating what we have too. If we have cold hard facts that say, hey, this is where our numbers roll in, this is where our numbers, you told us our numbers should roll in, where's the disconnect? So if we can have a business case going back to the province saying, hey, we're at, I mean, I'm all for it. Especially if we're going to get an extra 10% on, I mean, yeah, on 14 grand, it's only going to be $1,400, but it's an extra $1,400 in the service in the city and the commission's pockets instead of the province. So yeah, I think it's something we should look at tracking.
Just scanning through, anything else drawing your attention? Then I'll move on. Public Complaints Director, Brad indicated just through a text that nothing to report. My report is in, you know, again, it was a little bit simply a matter of meeting with Chief once this month, so I was low on my extra workload. Vice Chair, it's not your formal report, but anything going on, Judy?
Actually, good news. I on August 19th, I emailed Karen after our police commission meeting, and asked her, I said, I was wondering if they brought back the online training course that I could pass on to the new commissioners. She messaged me actually back within an hour. And she said that the contract was renewed and they've been waiting to hear on changes and updates. And then I did a follow-up email to her on the 15th, asking her what the status was, and if they had renewed the contract moving forward. She said, thank you for the reminder and follow-up. Can you provide me the full list of all your current commission members and emails, phone numbers? I will register everyone. Would you like to also schedule an online WebEx or a Microsoft Teams virtual session in which we can go over key responsibilities and questions for oversight? So I returned my email saying that I would, after the commission meeting, talk to everybody about if they were interested in the Teams meeting, virtual Teams session for questions, etc.
I think that it would be really great to participate in that, and I wonder if that's not something we should be trying to do in February. Just would have 2 commissioners turn over as of that date. Can you see if you can book her for that, Judy?
Yeah, I can give her some say that February would be better, and but I can give her the list of the present commissioners that would be here still as well if you wanted to start any training, or if you want to, we can move forward, at least forward with the ones that are Elaine, Cameron, Brad. I think Edie hasn't had any, you know, just if I could give her the list and all the emails, I think it'd be nice to get some of them started this year so that, you know, they've got it started.
Absolutely. No, the existing commissioners should definitely be on that list. And then if we're going to book a time to have her come and talk to the commission as a whole, then February would be my suggestion.
Okay, and the new commissioners with their emails, I should be giving the Lacombe Police Commission email?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll create a list and send it to her.
Would you actually have Jen do it? Can you forward it to Jen to do? Because then we can keep it on our records, Judy.
Oh, sure. Yep, that's a good idea because I only have a few more months.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for keeping on her.
Oh, you're welcome. I was actually just relieved and very happy that I got immediate response back from everything. So that was a huge step.
Yeah, absolutely.
Positive step. That's for sure.
And I believe also the province has is finalizing hiring the new provincial public complaints director or individual that will oversee that. So we might see a little more action in some of those, or consistency in some of the areas of government moving forward, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah, it does sound that she wants to get moving forward and change things a bit. So I think she wants to get back on track, she said on her correspondence. So.
Okay. Nice.
You're welcome.
Ruben.
Thank you. I know Jen and I put together a report. I don't see it in here. Maybe it's just not in my package. Anyways, a couple things that I thought were relevant to Commission 1. We did meet with Minister Madden. I know the mayor publicly mentioned in last council meeting, and so did I, that it was a very positive meeting, I thought.
Okay.
Went very well. I did formally ask the question about funding, and he was very equivocal in saying that would maintain. So, anyways.
Okay.
So the public meetings should happen anyway. Public minutes should happen anyway. So I thought that went well. And then September 9th, we just had coffee with council, but no mention of any police issues from the chair of the public. I did want to quickly acknowledge that this is my last police commission meeting. Of course, 2 things have to happen if I'm to return. One, I have to get reelected, and one, I have to get reappointed. So I don't know if either one of those things will happen, but anyway, I just did want to acknowledge all the volunteers. Thank you for all your efforts. thank you for putting in the time. I think you guys have done a tremendous job. I think these last 4 years have been very enjoyable, and if I'm reelected, I'll always be an advocate, always was, continue to be an advocate for police service. But so that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. I know, I think I can easily say on behalf of all of us that we've really appreciated having you as our council representative, and we appreciate all the support that you've shown us over the course of your term with us. And we certainly hope that we'll see you reelected and reappointed.
Just
I got
an extra beside my name on the 18th.
Yeah, yes, for Koenig. Awesome.
You got my ex. You got my ex, Ruben.
Yeah. Nice.
And sorry, Ruben, the elections are on the 18th. The next commission meeting is on the 14th. So.
Oh, I'm sorry, right? Well, I might be here then.
See, we can squeeze another meeting out of it.
Okay, my apologies. I'm here one more. You're stuck with me for one more time then, I think.
There we go.
Okay, well, we can say nice things about you again next month.
Way to go, Chief. Get him off the hook. No way.
Go.
All right, let's do a motion to accept reports. Thanks, Cam. All in favor? Unanimous. I am going to start cruising through and maybe cutting and pasting. The chief needs to be off to that COVID meeting for 11. Old business, the annual budget is in the package. I think just because it's still on the table until approved by council. I don't know there was anything we needed to discuss because the commission has already passed the budget.
And I think just for your purposes, the report is in there.
Yes.
Just coming up with a presentation strategy for the 27th, whether I'm attending, you're attending, or who from the commission is attending, and also how we're attending. I guess we'll find out a little bit more after today, but because we don't have a meeting before the 27th, there may have to be some I guess conversations or correspondence just in planning for that meeting. And then you and I can go over the narrative for that.
Yeah, so that we're ready for it. So basically on the 27th, the chief and I, well, as the chair, I present to council. It's always nice when we have commission members attending, but with this new lockdown, I suspect will be virtual. So if you just give an indication to Jen by email, when they send out the virtual invitation to that meeting, I think, Jen, you can help us make sure that any commissioner who wants an invite to be virtual on that presentation, that they're there. Is that fair? Okay. And the chief and I will do a little bit of pre-powered cramming to make sure that I'm on point on the presentation. What tends to happen when we go in there is they've seen the report, they've seen the written report the chief has prepared, and I hit the highlights and then we field questions that might arise. In the past, we've had it where the chief has often presented the report, and we've changed that up so that it's the chair, because it is our report and it's a better visual. But it's always, we need the chief there just to explain some of the details of the numbers when we get questions. Okay. Recruitment ads, Jen, I know we talked about this last meeting as well. Have we seen any applications yet for replacement commission members?
We've received 2 so far that have been submitted to the legislative coordinator to go to council.
And usually they come to us and we give the mayor an opinion.
Okay, that's.
I know. So do you want me to ask her to direct those?
Can we talk offline, Corey? But yes, for sure, like, yeah.
Commissioner Larson has done some work on the land acknowledgement, and I asked her earlier if we were running short of time, if she'd mind if we delay that. She's gotten some information that Jen can include in our agenda package for next meeting. If I can get your consent on that, we'll table it.
Of course.
I would like to hear a little bit about, I know Commissioner Dyslake was with Minister Madu, Councillor Connick was, and the chief was there. Cam, you were able to go as well, weren't you? How did it go?
Sorry. I'm just wondering for openness in the conversation, because of format of the meeting, if we shouldn't go in camera.
Okay, we'll move that to in camera then.
I'm not, if we're going to discuss some of the specifics, but as far as just the general sense of the meeting, that's fine.
Okay.
General sense went really well. If you wanted to,
yeah.
without going into anything else, yeah, I think it was really worthwhile.
I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there. I'm glad you guys were able to take the time. It's nice to have had that attention from the minister, and nice to be able to show off our facilities and the success that we're having here.
And just to follow up, general sense is that he really wanted to hear from the commission and the chief, of course, but really was thoughtful and receptive and had a listening ear, and was very, very much, was a reciprocal meeting. It wasn't just a sit and get, and it was very, I really, really, really valued being there. It was fantastic.
Lane, did you have any comments?
No. I was going to move to go in camera so we could discuss it immediately.
I wouldn't mind if we just got through some of the new business, and then just because we have other public agenda stuff, and then go through there. So just on 7.1, this is the time for the self-assessment. And Commissioner Dyslake has again been our survey hero on that. I wonder though, whether we could, what's been done in the past is Commissioner Dyslake sent that out, and if we shouldn't, from a procedure point of view, have that go through our admin through Jennifer, just so that she's got that record. Does that make sense, Sonia?
Well, if Jennifer has Google Forms, that's what it's done in. The problem has been is that the admin assistant doesn't have the Google format to have Google Forms. So I've always been the keeper of that until they have Google Forms. That's what it's in. It's not in a SurveyMonkey or a subscribed format. We just use the free Google format that I have on my computer.
Okay.
So she can look when she checks things out, and I can certainly share the survey with her. But at this point, that was our hiccup in the past.
Okay, and that's it. I think it's worked really well. I was just thinking a little bit more just for the longevity of it. So if you don't mind sending that off to keep us on track on our work plan, that would be great.
It'll be sent before the end of the meeting.
Yay, thank you so much. Pardon me? Yes, go ahead, Elaine.
Thank you, Chair. Is there a reason why we do not use SurveyMonkey for something like that?
I think it's been a matter of the volunteer who created it used the form that she was convenient to her.
And I have a paid account with SurveyMonkey, and I do have some of these forms in SurveyMonkey, but I'm not, haven't renewed my subscription for the last few years because Google Forms does the trick for free.
I will ask to make sure that I have access to Google Forms. The city also has a SurveyMonkey account that they keep active all the time that I'm sure we could use if going forward in the future.
That's right. It would just be a matter of transposing all of my surveys that I've sent out into SurveyMonkey, and then you guys have them forevermore, but someone has to do the typing and just putting them into that document.
I think we have that ability to ask Jennifer to add that to her work plan. It's not like it's a rush, Jen.
That's right.
We just get ourselves pulled back together if you would do that. But I think for this one, let's go with what we have, and then for next year we'll plan that that it's the data that Jennifer has and can.
Right. And as we go forward, every time we do a survey, Jen, I can include her in the survey grouping, and she can start just saving them and then typing them up when she gets a chance in her workday.
It looks like she has lots of time on her hands. So that was the facial expression I saw.
I'm working with the election part, so right now it's a little kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So.
This is not an immediate project. But just thinking a lot more about the fact that we'll start to have turnover, and we've been doing a lot of things that we should be centralizing. Mandatory vaccinations is in the new business, and I think that was an important topic for discussion for today. So I did want to get for that before we go in camera.
I'm wondering if I should talk about this in council.
In camera. All right, so Commissioner Connick is suggesting we also bump that agenda item into in camera because it is a labor legal issue as well. So I think that's a wise suggestion. On new business, the chief and I put a Police Act Section 37.2 policy, and that's I think just getting the commission up to date and a little bit more aware and prepared for using that section of the Police Act as one of our tools in disciplinary proceedings. And again, because I am just shortening this agenda today, I would ask your indulgence in us just tabling that to the next meeting. Is that?
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Sure.
Which is in alignment with tabling it to the next meeting. But just for context on this, within the Police Act, really dealing with performance issues, there is only one mechanism to deal with performance versus discipline. And it's a challenge that all police services have currently. There are recently policies that other commissions have adopted. And what I would recommend is that for the next meeting, I bring forward a draft policy for consideration by the commission for implementation.
Okay.
If that would work.
I think that would be a good use of time so that we can actually physically look at what it would see and start making some progress towards it.
Okay.
Any questions on?
Yeah, is that policy in our binder, 372.2 or whatever it is? Just trying to find it here again.
You'll find 37.2 under the Police Act, so section 37 sub 2 of the Police Act.
Okay.
37.1 is the roles of the chief for disciplinary reasons. 37.2 is the role of the commission. 37.4 or 3 is if there's any policies in the collective agreement, which there are not. And then 37.4 is just referencing other areas of the Police Act that don't apply when 37.2 is utilized. So that's the area you look for 37.2, and there's not a lot of information there.
I do think this is referenced in our policies. I think that the chief is looking at just having the commission prepared with some improvements to our policies. Sorry, I'm just kind of struggling just finding my version of it.
Or aligning a procedure within the policy for that process, because it's not clearly defined.
Okay. On information, we did have a newsletter from the AAPG, and it, when I read through it, I know there were some interesting things. You know, they again, Judy, were bugging them about where's the commissioner training going. So I think that there's been some support that way, just to kind of say we need you, we need you to do your job. So that was good. But then again, just some information about the different meetings that are going through. So take a peek through that when you get a chance. We also received a letter then from the Director of Law Enforcement. If you recall, our police service and Sergeant Christian did a massive amount of work in 2019 to make sure that we were up to date and proactive in getting our standards audits completed. And so 2 years later, we have a lovely certificate that says that we are in compliance. So congratulations, Chief. That was a huge project. And it was one that the Chief is helping us make sure that we're pushing to keep on top of, even though the Justice Ministry is kind of, I think, revamping things and behind on it. So that is good.
So we will display the plaque proudly in our front lobby. But work has already begun for our next audit. So Sergeant Zenz has been working on putting together the package for the next audit that should take place in 2023. So we're already ahead of that, unless the rules change, but it is definitely a standing item for us moving forward, and we're on top of it.
Any questions or comments on that? The next item that we included for information was a letter from Minister Madu to the local victim services president. And I thought it was interesting for us just to pay attention, because it does look like there will be some reviews on how victim services are provided. And I think as a commission, we should be keeping an eye on it. It's not our role, but I think that it's part of our service as a whole, in terms of going back to that whole safe and healthy community. It's there. So we'll be interested to see what comes up and how that might affect the service as well.
Yeah, and just for information purposes, that's directly related to this letter, Deb from Victim Services let me know that her, along with a number of neighboring VSU units, did have a meeting with the provincial government to discuss all of the issues that are in the letter. I don't know that there has been any result to that. Judy may know more from a VSU board perspective, but on an ongoing basis, we continue to provide our support for VSU, but we don't have a lot of information as to what the government is going to do with the funding for those units.
Yeah, that's in discussion right now with the executive. We haven't had much contact as of yet, because of Deb just had a meeting recently on Monday, and she had just come back from the funeral with her dad and father-in-law passing away. So we're moving forward with information from that, and it sounded like they stood their ground working together on what was said. So they've got a great support system in regards to other program managers in other victim services area. So, but if I have any other information, I'm sure the chief will probably find out, but the same time I will, but.
Okay. All right. Unless there's any further comments, I would think we now can go on camera. Elaine?
I'll move to that we go in camera.
Thank you. 10:26, all in favor?